Some of the biggest challenges brass players, trumpet players, trombone players, French horn players are faced with at a young age. For trumpet players anyway, I think some of the problems that begin at a young age. We all kind of, we develop some bad habits early on in anything we do, whether it's sports or anything. You can develop bad habits that are difficult to correct later. So I think it's important to get young players started off on the right track. There's many different thoughts on this, on how to breathe correctly and how to breathe in support. Something that I didn't learn until later in life. And because of that, I caused some injuries to myself. And this has happened to a lot of other, like I have my neck puffs out because I didn't know how to breathe in support when I was young. I used to cut my lip all the time. I see this happening to a lot of young players. I try to, when I meet somebody young for the first time, I try to, from experience, try to teach them how to overcome some of the problems that I had earlier on. I think that a lot of embouchure problems for trumpet players develop early. I think we start young trumpet players on mouthpieces that are too big, personally. You figure, when we're talking about trumpet mouthpieces, they have a small face, they have small lips, and then the mouthpiece that comes with every trumpet is a 7C, which is fairly large for a small face. And so you have this mouthpiece that's too big, too deep, not enough resistance. So a young player that doesn't know how to move air yet has a hard time finding the resistance to produce a nice sound. And I think then they start fighting things. And I believe that a lot of embouchure problems get developed early on like that, and then they have to get corrected later. There's a lot of schools of thought about trumpet mouthpieces, that we all play this one. You play this one, and then you work hard, and you practice hard on it, and that's it. Well, that's kind of old school, maybe your head's stuck in the sand of tradition kind of way of thinking. We've gotten much smarter about this now, and thanks to great teachers like Bobby Shu, who have really enlightened a lot of people on what makes this thing work efficiently. I think that if people can research that information early in their playing career, they can help overcome any problems that might come later. Like I wish I had the information I have now at 60 years old. I wish I had that when I was 15 years old, and I wouldn't have been cutting my lip and having neck problems and all these other issues that I've had to overcome over the years. So anyway, in a nutshell, those are some of the things, the problems that brass players have early on. The breathing and support thing is really an important aspect of it, of this, understanding how that works and how to keep the upper body relaxed. Because as kids, you see kids play and they go, and everything is forced. It's a forced thing, and so that's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to keep the upper body as relaxed as possible and keep the tension here. It's never going to be relaxed because it's the trumpet, but we have to be as relaxed as possible. Just like a baseball player swinging the bat. If they're tense, the ball's not going to go as far. But if they use technique and it's a relaxed swing and they meet the ball, or golf or basketball or anything, it's all in the technique and making it as easy as possible, then you're going to have the best result. I can definitely hear the difference if somebody's playing with tension. If I have a student come over, I can hear the tension in their sound, and I can usually tell because the elbows are in this, and I'm watching them breathe, and they're going, and they're breathing very shallow and very tense. And so there's already tension. You haven't even played a note yet, and the tension is already there, and you can hear that. So I usually try to get them to breathe and relax and go, and just like yawning, like that kind of relaxed feeling, and that's the feeling we want to have in the upper body when we play, because there's going to be tension when we play, but you don't want to create it ahead of time. You're going to hear it in the sound. The sound's going to have resistance in it, and we want the sound to be like an opera singer. The sound to go forward, relaxed sound, big sound, so the sound grows this way, and not with tension in it and fighting to come out of the bell. There's also, there's techniques that we use with the tongue level and things, and I hear a lot of players that use the tongue level, like say "ee." Like when we sing higher notes, we use the syllable "e," and you hear "e." You hear how tense that sounds, as opposed to "ah," much bigger sound. So one of the things I do to help alleviate tension from somebody's sound is to tell them to forget about all this for a minute and think like an opera singer and play ah, like a note. For instance, I will say E, and then I'll say ah. So that's E, and here's ah. So you hear a big difference in sound. And on the higher notes, it's even more dramatic. Because on the higher notes, we tend to want to go ee, and get even more tension. And so when you get up to those notes, you think ah, the tongue will do what it needs to do naturally. You don't have to force it. It will go up as much as it needs to go up. And anyway, that helps alleviate tension from the sound. And I've had a lot of success with that with students of mine. And I will make them just play notes, like one note like that, and go ah over and over. Go. With no tongue or anything. Get the tongue out of the way and just move the air past the lips, making the horn resonate. And you hear how much bigger the sound is. And they get used to hearing that sound, then it becomes more natural. We overthink this sometime. The trumpet, it's really not that complicated. We're just blowing into a tube. The complicated part is here in playing music. The way we make sound, we make more complicated than it really is. There's things to think about, of course, if that makes sense.